Savannah Brooks's face was streaked with engine grease and sunburn. She had pulled her cap low over her ears to shield herself from the harsh Florida sun. At only 23 years old, she understood every bolt, piston, and fuel line better than most. Trained mechanics. Ocean Fix Marine, the humble dock where she worked, was a small, weather-worn spot by the coast where she mostly fixed battered fishing boats and patched up old hulls. Savannah never had the money for college, but her hands knew what books couldn't teach. Her father, now gone, was a mechanic too, who used to tell her, "Engines speak louder than people. Listen." After he died of cancer, Savannah picked up the very same tools he had used and kept going. Her bond with the world was forged not in words or classrooms, but through the rhythm of engines and the silence between gears. One sweltering afternoon, a dazzling mega yacht pulled into the dock. It glided across the water like it carried its own wind, dressed in a sheen so white it reflected the sky, with chrome edges, a tall polished mast, and a security team that looked like they came straight from a Hollywood action movie. Savannah kept working, wiping sweat from her brow, but she couldn't help noticing the sudden shift in the air. The yacht's presence swallowed the dock's humble mood. A sharply dressed man stepped off the ramp mid-40s, Bluetooth earpiece in one ear, expensive shoes, exuding confidence like cologne. His name was Grayson Trent, the CEO of a high-end marine tech company called Marinex Global, headquartered just down the coast. He looked around with frustration. His yacht was broken engine trouble that even his elite team of engineers hadn't managed to fix. He was irritated, impatient, and clearly used to getting his way. When the aging dock manager nervously pointed toward Savannah and suggested she take a look, Grayson raised an eyebrow and chuckled dismissively. "You want her to touch a $10 million yacht?" He scoffed, motioning toward Savannah, who stood in overalls, grease on her cheek, holding a wrench like it was an extension of her arm. Savannah didn't flinch. "I can take a look," she said. "No promises." Grayson crossed his arms and grinned like it was all a joke. "Fine, I dare you," he said mockingly. "If you can figure out what my Harvard-trained engineers couldn't, I'll give you $5,000. The dockhands around them chuckled. The dare wasn't just about the yacht. It was about pride. He thought he was humiliating her. Savannah said nothing more. She walked up the gangplank and disappeared into the engine room, leaving everyone behind with raised eyebrows and smirking expressions. Inside the luxury yacht, everything gleamed: polished teak floors, glowing navigation panels, soft leather seating. But Savannah ignored the elegance. She listened to the hum of the engine, to the air passing through ducts, to the slight irregular rhythm in the coolant system. She knelt near the control panel, fingertips lightly touching the housing of the engine as if trying to feel its pulse. Within minutes, she had a hunch. The issue wasn't in the software or major components. Something mechanical was choking the flow. Her eyes narrowed. It was the starboard micro-hydraulic lift chamber misaligned, likely from thermal expansion. That misalignment was skewing pressure readings and tricking the diagnostics into throwing off false errors. Savannah quietly set to work. No special tools, no digital readouts, just her instinct and a small wrench. While others watched the clock, she watched the system breathe. Over the next 2 hours, Savannah carefully removed a panel, rerouted a blocked coolant line, adjusted a tension rod, and recalibrated a sensitive valve manually. Dockhands grew bored and started wandering off, assuming the show was over. But inside the cabin, Savannah moved with confidence, like a sculptor seeing shapes no one else could. Finally, she pressed the ignition button. The engine purred. Not just ran, but purred, like a lion stretching after a deep sleep. It was smooth, strong, alive. Grayson, who had been standing by the railing with arms crossed in a doubtful smirk, froze. He walked into the cabin and stared at the control panel, eyes darting to the stable readings. "What did you do?" he asked, genuinely stunned. Savannah stood up, wiping sweat from her brow. "It wasn't your software. One hydraulic unit was out of place. Simple pressure confusion." She paused, then added, "Want me to explain it again, or are you good?" Grayson didn't answer at first. He stared at her, confused, as if seeing her for the first time. "Who are you?" he finally asked, his voice no longer mocking. Savannah gave a small shrug. "Just someone who listens." For a moment, the only sound between them was the engine running perfectly beneath their feet. Grayson's Bluetooth buzzed. Someone from his company was trying to reach him. He ignored the call. His attention was locked on Savannah now. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You didn't go to college?" She shook her head. "Couldn't afford it. My dad taught me what he could. The rest I learned from manuals and mistakes." Grayson was quiet again. "You make $15 an hour, and you just solved something my $1 million team failed to figure out." Savannah looked away, embarrassed. "It's honest work," she said. There was a long silence between them, broken only by the occasional squawk of gulls overhead. Grayson looked down at the deck, then back at her, the wind tugging lightly at his jacket. "You ever seen advanced propulsion systems?" he asked. "Just in photos," she replied. "You want to see the real thing?" he said, gesturing for her to follow. She hesitated, then nodded. They went below deck, past the luxury suites and entertainment rooms, to a private lab space hidden deep inside the yacht. Inside were sleek machines, prototypes still in development. Fuel cell systems, adaptive rudder controls, and AI-powered marine tech not yet released to the market. Grayson pointed to one system. "This here? We can't get it stable. Want to try?" Savannah blinked. "You serious?" "I dare you," he said again, this time not mocking, but intrigued. Savannah approached the console. She traced the wires, scanned the blinking lights, and ran her fingers across the metal with care. Within 15 minutes, she found the problem: an oversensitive fuel regulator causing the AI to misfire under low-speed conditions. "Your algorithm overcompensates for wave drag," she said plainly. "That's why your efficiency drops below cruising speeds." Grayson's mouth parted slightly in disbelief. "We've had engineers arguing over that for a month." Savannah smiled faintly. "Sometimes the answer's not in the data. It's in what the engine isn't saying." When the yacht finally pulled away from the dock that evening, its engine purred cleaner than it had in years, its new systems finally stable. And Grayson stood beside Savannah on the deck, watching the horizon. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the smartest person in the room. As they reached the pier again, Grayson stopped her. "Savannah," he said, pulling out a folder. "This is for you." Inside was a formal job offer: lead systems technician at Marinex Labs, full benefits, full scholarship coverage for engineering school if she ever wanted it. Savannah held the folder with both hands, stunned. "Is this real?" she asked quietly. Grayson looked her in the eyes and said, "You're real. And people like you deserve to be seen." The golden light of sunset caught her face as she looked out over the water, eyes full of something she'd never had before: possibility. Savannah stared at the file in her hands as if it were a dream. She had only ever seen documents like this on TV: corporate contracts, high-tech job offers, scholarship promises. But this one had her name on it, Savannah R. Brooks, typed neatly at the top and sealed with a gold-embossed emblem. She stood at the edge of the dock where she had spent years fixing broken motors for fishermen, and somehow that dock now felt different under her feet. Grayson stood in front of her, no longer wearing his arrogance like armor. His eyes were softer, more aware. "I'm not offering you a favor," he said. "You have something money can't buy." Savannah closed the folder gently and gave him the faintest smile. "I'm not accepting the folder," she replied. "I'm accepting the work." 2 days later, Savannah walked into the R&D floor of Marinex Global. The facility looked like something from a science fiction movie. Polished steel floors, glowing wall panels, and technicians in spotless coats moving between 3D holograms and engine prototypes. As soon as she stepped in, heads turned. People stared, curious, puzzled, maybe even doubtful. A girl in overalls with grease on her hands was now their new lead tech. Savannah ignored them. She didn't care. Her focus zeroed in on her assigned station, Unit 4, where a hybrid electric propeller model was stalled. Within 20 minutes, she noticed a subtle vibration that no one else had picked up on. She bypassed the formal diagnostics, rechecked the wiring, and recalibrated the settings. Manually, the vibration vanished, just like that. Her first hour, and already she had silenced the machine and the whispers. During the lunch break, Grayson walked onto the R&D floor and spotted Savannah working with her spanner, tweaking a connector module. "You don't eat?" he asked. Without looking up, she replied, "The engine's still speaking to me. I'll eat when it's done." He laughed softly. "That's the second time today you've caught something our systems couldn't." Savannah gave a faint shrug. "Machines talk. Software just filters the noise." He stepped closer, this time with genuine curiosity. "When did you realize you had this ability?" he asked. Savannah finally paused and looked up. "When my father used to sit inside a rusted fishing boat and talk to the engine like it was alive. I was 11. Grayson nodded slowly. She wasn't just smart, she was trained by life itself. Not a classroom, not a degree, but by survival, intuition, and trust and instinct. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Savannah switched off her console, locked up her tools, and caught a faint glance at Jared, one of the junior engineers, watching her from the far end of the lab. His eyes weren't welcoming. They were narrowed with resentment. Jared had graduated from Stanford and had been with Marinex for 3 years. Everyone expected him to be promoted. And now Savannah, a girl with no formal credentials, was his boss. The next morning when Savannah returned to her station, she found the test system behaving erratically. She ran the code again, then physically opened the console. Someone had tampered with the wiring. It didn't take her long to trace the damage and quietly fix it. Once the test passed cleanly, she walked over to Jared's desk and calmly said, "Don't fight the system. It's not me testing you. It's the engine." He didn't respond, but his silence told her everything. 2 weeks passed. By then, Savannah's reputation had spread through the entire department. Engineers who once doubted her now watched her work in silent awe. She was fast, precise, and oddly intuitive. One day, Grayson called her into his office, an enormous glass-paneled room overlooking the ocean and the entire R&D floor. Savannah walked in holding her clipboard. Grayson turned and said, "We're developing a military-grade propulsion system, prototype 4. It's failed every test. I want you to lead it." Savannah blinked. "Me? Military tech? I thought I was assigned to basic commercial systems." Grayson shook his head. "You're not basic. You're extraordinary. And I don't need another textbook engineer. I need someone with instinct." Savannah walked to the window, staring at the sea beyond the lab. "All right," she said. "But if the system hides anything from me, I need full access." Working on Prototype 4 wasn't easy. It was a labyrinth of complexity, dual fuel integration, heat-sensitive expansion valves, and AI-controlled pressure balancing. But Savannah dove in like a swimmer in her own current. Within 72 hours, she found 3 critical issues: a faulty actuator overheating at night cycles, a thermal feedback loop that misfired on emergency shutdown, and worst, an error in design. That could cause an explosion upon full deployment. She handed her report to Grayson, who immediately called an emergency board meeting. Savannah stood in front of the top engineers and executives, calmly laying out her findings. No PowerPoint, no buzzwords, just raw data and clear language. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Grayson closed the file slowly and said, "Today, you taught us all that brilliance doesn't wear a suit." That evening, as Savannah returned home, she received a strange message on her phone. "You made enemies today. Be careful." Her pulse quickened. She didn't know who sent it. Maybe Jared, maybe someone higher up who felt threatened. She powered down the phone and went back to boiling water for tea, thinking quietly about how talent is rarely safe. The next morning, she discovered her personal tool set had been tampered with. The screwdriver ends were dulled, and the soldering gun had been rewired dangerously. She reviewed the lab security footage and caught a partial frame of a masked engineer near her station. She showed Grayson discreetly. He activated a quiet HR investigation. Within 3 days, 3 staff members were suspended. Savannah realized something deeper that day. Her simplicity wasn't just powerful, it was threatening. And people feared what they didn't understand. A week later, the company held a major press event. Grayson took the stage, smiling at the crowd of reporters and executives. "From doc to director," he announced. The applause was thunderous. He welcomed Savannah to the podium. She walked up, still wearing her worn boots, still with oil on her knuckles. She stared into the crowd, into a world so far from where she started. Then she said, "I wasn't made by the system. I was made by life. I respect those who learn in libraries. But I ask the world to also hear those who learn with their hands." The room stood in a full ovation. Those claps weren't for a speech. They were for the girl who was once mocked on a dock and who now stood as the soul of the company. Savannah Brooks. The girl who had accepted a challenge to fix a billionaire's yacht had ended up fixing far more than just a machine. She had fixed perceptions, rewired expectations, and proved that brilliance, true brilliance, doesn't ask for permission.